The year was 1861, and the last gust of autumn rolled across the barren stretch of prairie, lifting dust and desperation in equal measure. Clara Whitmore stepped off the train onto the cracked wood platform of Red Rock Junction with a valise in one hand and the weight of two souls in the other, her own and the unborn child turning in her belly. She wore her late husband's coat, threadbare at the cuffs, and a bonnet pulled low to shield her face from sun and judgment. The hem of her dress was stained with soot and ash from the long train ride west, and every step off that iron beast felt like a final one. Her boots hit dirt and the world she'd known, the one filled with fire, shame, and whispered scorn, vanished behind her like the plume of steam trailing off the engine. The letter crumpled slightly in her glove. She smoothed it for the 100th time, eyes flicking to the signature. Horace Green, cattleman, seeking God-fearing wife for homestead partnership. Must be strong, honest, and willing to bear children. She had hoped the last part would mean something. That would buy her time, mercy, maybe even kindness. She spotted him immediately, tall, bearded, sun-browned, leaning against a fence post near the livery. His coat was fine wool, and the silver buckle on his belt gleamed even under the overcast sky. A man with money, with land, with expectations. He looked up. His eyes narrowed. Clara straightened. Her fingers drifted instinctively to the round swell beneath her coat, then dropped. She walked slowly, steadily. "Mr. Green?" Her voice cracked like an old floorboard. He gave a shallow nod. "Miss Whitmore, I came as your letter said, on the noon train." His eyes fell to her middle. They lingered. Clara's heart pounded so hard she feared it might push her backward. She opened her mouth to speak, explain, plead, but he beat her to it. "You're with child?" "Yes," she said softly. "Widowed. In the fire." It was all so sudden. "You didn't mention that." His voice was flint striking stone. I wanted to explain in person. It's not what You lied." "No," she said quickly. You brought a burden I didn't ask for. I didn't sign up to raise another man's bastard." The words struck like a whip. She flinched, shame burning across her face like firelight. A man snorted nearby. Another spat tobacco. A few heads turned. She saw a boy tug his mother's skirt, pointing. The woman slapped his hand down, eyes cold as river stones. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. You thought wrong," Horace cut in. "I need a wife, not a charity case." He turned and walked away, boots grinding gravel. Not another word, not even a glance back. Clara stood frozen, her valise dangling from numb fingers. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of manure and iron, and the first drops of cold rain began to patter on the roof of the depot. Her coat clung to her shoulders. No one came forward. No one offered her shade. She blinked once, twice, then sank on her trunk, biting her lower lip to keep the tears from falling. She stayed like that for hours, or maybe just minutes that felt like a slow death. The town of Red Rock wasn't large. One main street, a church, a trading post, a jailhouse, a saloon. Smoke curled from chimneys, and guns hung from every hip like accessories. Law here was the kind men carried themselves, and women, when seen, kept their eyes down and mouths shut. She knocked first on the inn's door, a sagging place called the Cloverleaf. The innkeeper, a balding man with grease-stained sleeves, barely looked her way before shaking his head. "Full up. There's no one even here," Clara said gently. "I don't want trouble, and you look like it." She tried the general store. "I'll work for a meal. Anything. I can sew, I can read." A woman behind the counter frowned, then muttered, "Go on now. Ain't right, showing up with a belly like that. Looking for charity. Folks'll talk." They already were. By dusk, Clara found herself crouched behind the livery, tucking herself into the shadow of a dilapidated barn. The boards creaked as she pushed open the door, eyes scanning for rats, snakes, or worse. Inside, the straw was damp and old, but the roof mostly held. She curled beneath a blanket of her own making, two shawls stitched together during her nights in the rail car, and held her stomach as the child inside shifted restlessly. "You'll be all right," she whispered. "Mama's here." Mama's still breathing. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Then silence. She must have dozed off. She didn't remember closing her eyes. But when they flew open, it was to the flicker of lantern light and the sound of boots scuffing wood. "Who the hell's in my barn?" A man's voice, rough with command. Clara sat up fast, heart thudding. "Please, I'm sorry, I didn't know." The lantern moved closer. A tall figure filled the doorway. He wore a long duster and a hat pulled low, shadow hiding most of his face. But the beard was unkempt and dusted with gray. His boots were caked in dried mud. A rifle hung at his side, not drawn but visible. Clara stood quickly, hands raised. "I'm leaving. I'll go. Just let me get my things." The man held up a hand. "Don't move so quick. Ain't gonna shoot a woman." She hesitated, trembling. He lowered the lantern, eyes sweeping her up and down. "You pregnant?" "Yes," she whispered. He let out a long breath through his nose. "Figures." She stiffened. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Ain't many who take shelter in here by choice. You look like hell." She looked down. Mud covered her skirts. Her shoes were soaked. Her lips were cracked. "I had nowhere else to go." He didn't reply right away. "Then, town spit you out, didn't they?" Her mouth trembled, but she nodded. "What's your name?" "Clara Whitmore." He tilted his head. "You got folks?" "No, not anymore." A pause. Then, "I'm James. James Coulter." She waited. He didn't say more. "Thank you for not shooting," she said quietly. He scratched at his beard. "Wouldn't be the first soul hit out in my barn, though most weren't polite. I'll go." "You hungry?" She blinked. "I got beans and some rabbit stew. Could do with less of it, truth be told." Clara hesitated. "I won't hurt you," he said flatly. "Not my nature, but I don't take kindly to thieves." "You ain't one, are you?" "No," she said quickly. He nodded once. "Come on, then." Outside, the wind had calmed, though the air still bit. His fire was a few paces from a barn, beside a wagon hitched to two thick, dark horses. A pot bubbled above the flames, the scent of meat and herbs nearly knocking her over. She hadn't realized how hollow her belly had grown. She sat cross-legged, careful, as he handed her a tin bowl. He didn't speak again for a while, only watched her eat. When she paused, he refilled her bowl without asking. She hadn't been offered seconds since her husband died. "Why'd you come here?" he asked finally. "To marry a man named Horace Green." James grunted. "I know him. Self-important prick." Clara gave a tired smile. "He didn't want me. You're better off." "I don't feel it." He looked into the fire, his eyes unreadable. "Frontier's hard on everyone, but it don't mean it has to turn us mean." Silence again, but softer now. After a time, he rose and handed her a rolled-up blanket. "Ain't much, but it's clean." She stood. "I should sleep in the barn." "You should sleep where it's warm. I ain't gonna lay a hand on you." She searched his face. Nothing there but worn creases and the weariness of a man who'd seen too much and said too little. "Thank you," she said again. He tipped his hat and turned away. Inside the wagon, she curled under the blanket. The straw mattress smelled of pine and tobacco. The baby kicked once as if to say, "You did good, Mama." Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Not of grief, but of relief. Just a flicker of warmth in a world that had nearly frozen her solid. Outside, the fire crackled. James sat alone, a rifle across his lap, staring out into the shadows as if waiting for ghosts. And though Clara didn't yet know it, the moment he had seen her on that barn floor, her life had already begun to change. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't afraid to close her eyes. The sun rose hard and golden over the prairie, burning off the frost that had clung to the wagon's canvas. Clara sat wrapped in James Coulter's spare coat, sipping black coffee from a tin mug, its bitter bite waking something half-dead inside her. Her breath came in white plumes. The baby shifted again, turning just beneath her ribs. She rubbed her belly instinctively. James crouched nearby, rolling a strip of jerky between his teeth and tightening the leather strap on his saddlebag. He hadn't said much since dawn, just pointed to where the river curved and mentioned they'd be riding northwest for the Oregon Territory. So there was land there, fresh and empty. Said he didn't mind company if she could ride. She hadn't answered right away, and he hadn't asked twice. Now, watching him move, calm and sure, Clara found herself wondering what kind of man offered shelter to a stranger and then the road west without expectation. Maybe one who had known loss deep enough to recognize it in others. "I ain't your responsibility," she said finally. James didn't look up. Ain't that what the frontier's for? Picking up what's left and seeing if it walks. "I'm with child. I seen. I won't slow you down." "You will," he said, tugging the cinch strap tight. "But I'll still take you." She stood, brushing hair from her eyes, the wind tugging at her skirts. "Why?" He turned to her then, the brim of his hat casting shadow across a face marked with old pain and fresher resolve. "Because I reckon folk forget what it means to help without weighing the cost." "I ain't forgot." She didn't answer. Didn't need to. By noon, they were on the trail. The landscape rolled out ahead of them in waves of ochre and gold. Sparse trees leaned eastward, shaped by wind and time. Coyotes howled now and again, far enough not to trouble, close enough to remind. The wagon creaked, the horse snorted, and James rode, just ahead, always watching, always silent. Clara rode beside the wagon, bundled against the wind. Her body ached, and her back screamed from too many nights on rail cars and cold ground. But she held herself upright, determined not to be seen as weak. At camp that evening, she asked to chop the wood. James raised an eyebrow. "In your condition? I ain't porcelain." He let her. She fumbled the first few swings, but the axe found its rhythm soon enough. Her palms blistered. Her arms trembled. But she split a dozen logs before collapsing onto a stump and catching her breath. When she looked up, James was watching her, the corners of his mouth almost lifting. Later, by firelight, he offered her a rifle. She hesitated. "I've never shot one." "Best learn. You ride west unarmed. You may as well paint a target on your back." He showed her how to load, aim, fire. The kick of the gun bruised her shoulder, but the shot cracked true, echoing into the twilight. Her hands trembled, but she didn't drop it. James nodded. "You'll do." That night, she dreamed of fire again. Her husband's voice, the crash of beams, the final scream swallowed by smoke. She woke gasping, eyes wide, chest height. James was already awake, sharpening his knife under the moonlight. He didn't ask what haunted her. She didn't offer it. They rode through canyon country next. Steep rock faces, shadows that lingered too long. A hawk wheeled above them one morning, circling. James muttered something under his breath and tapped the rifle stock at his hip. "Bad sign?" she asked. "Means something's dead or close to it." 2 nights later, as the moon hung low and yellow over the ridgeline, Clara told him everything. She sat with her knees drawn to her chest, fire crackling low. "My husband died in a mill fire 6 months back. He went in to save 2 boys. Only got one out. They called him a hero. Buried him with honors. But his family, they turned on me the minute they knew I was pregnant. Said I'd cursed him. Said I was selfish for keeping the child." James stared into the flames, jaw tight. "They threw me out. I sold my ring for train fare. Thought maybe some man out here would see me. Not the shame." He was silent a long while, then said, "Folks are cruel when they think God's on their side." She smiled bitterly. "I don't think he listens much anymore." "He does," James murmured. "Just not to them." She looked up. "What about you? Who'd you leave behind?" He took a long pull from his canteen. "Brother. Went east to fight in the war. Wrote letters every week. Then they stopped. Mama took sick right after. Never saw peace again. I'm sorry. So am I." The fire cracked. Somewhere an owl called. Clara felt the baby shift again and whispered, "She kicks more when I talk." "She?" James blinked. "I can feel it. I don't know how to explain, just a mother's knowing." He stared at her belly, then looked away quickly. "She'll have your strength." Clara's voice was soft. "I hope she has your kindness." The rain came in fast the next morning, dark clouds rolling in from the west. James pushed the horses harder, urging the wagon toward a sheltered hollow he remembered from years past. By midday, the road had turned to muck. Wheels stuck, hoofs sank. Then the river appeared, swollen, angry, wide as a battlefield. James cursed under his breath. Wasn't supposed to rise this quick. They pulled up short. Water rushed past, carrying branches and debris. Clara climbed down, eyeing the broken rope bridge in the distance. "We going to cross?" "We have to." There ain't no other way lest we backtrack 3 days. Can we make it? James looked grim. We'll see. They lashed the wagon tight, covered it with tarps, bound crates, and gear to keep them from drifting. The horses were skittish. Clara held one's reins as James led the other into the water. The current slammed into them. The wagon groaned. One wheel lifted slightly, threatening to spin. Clara's heart pounded. She gripped tighter. Then the wagon jolted, dipped, and began to drift. "James!" she screamed. He shoved forward, shoulder deep, forcing the lead horse through. Clara lost her footing in the mud, but held the line. Water surged up to her waist. The baby twisted inside her. One of the crates snapped loose. The horse screamed. James reached for the reins and disappeared. "James!" She staggered forward, mud sucking at her boots. A moment later, he burst from the current, coughing, dragging the reins behind him. The wagon hit dry land with a crash. They collapsed side by side, soaked to the bone, gasping. For a long moment, nothing moved but their chests. Then Clara began to laugh. It started low, a tremble in her throat, then rose like a flame. Wild, breathless, uncontrollable. James looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "We made it," she choked out. "You crazy, mule-headed fool. We made it." James leaned back, eyes closed. "Ain't dead yet." She helped him build a fire that night. Her hands were blistered. His leg had a gash from a submerged branch. They sat close to the flames, steam rising from their clothes. He didn't speak for a while. Then, "You didn't run. I've run enough." He glanced at her. "You could have let me drown. I don't leave folks behind." His voice softened. "Me neither." She cleaned the wound on his leg, tearing a strip from her skirt. He flinched, but didn't pull away. When she finished, she met his gaze and said, "We're even now." He didn't answer, but something unspoken passed between them, solid and sure. The next day, the sky cleared. They pressed on through pine groves and winding hills. At night, she leaned back against a fallen log, warming her hands, and listened to James hum old songs from his childhood. His voice was low, gravelly, but steady. Safe. He watched her belly sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking. She saw it, the way his eyes softened, not with pity, but something else, something fragile. "I used to think I'd raise her alone," she said one night. He looked up. "But now, I don't feel alone." He shifted, uncomfortable. "I'm not much of a father figure." "You're something better," she said. He blinked. "What's that?" "A man who don't run when things get hard." He looked away. "You're the only person in 5 years who's said that like it's a good thing." Clara smiled. "Then you've been talking to the wrong folks." They camped beside a canyon that night. In the morning, James rose early to scout ahead, rifle slung low. Clara sat in the grass, watching the sun rise behind the peaks, her hands folded over the curve of her stomach. She felt tired, but not the kind that broke you. The kind that meant you'd earned something. Survived. When James returned, his face was hard. "Trouble?" He nodded. "2 men followed us from the river. I saw their tracks. Could be scouts. Bandits? Likely." Clara stood, brushing dust from her skirt. "What do we do?" "We keep moving. Fast. Stay alert. And you keep that rifle close." She didn't argue. As they rode out, the wind picked up again, dry and hot this time. The trees thinned. Shadows grew long. But Clara's spine was straighter now, her grip firmer, her gaze steady. She didn't know what waited ahead, but she knew she wouldn't face it alone. And that, for the first time in a long, long while, felt like a promise worth writing for. Short summary. She was rejected as a mail-order bride for being pregnant, but one man changed everything. Clara Whitmore, a widowed and pregnant woman, is cruelly turned away by her intended mail-order groom upon arriving in a harsh frontier town. With nowhere to turn, she finds unexpected shelter in the barn of James Coulter, a solitary ex-soldier with a haunted past. As they travel west through danger, wilderness, and emotional scars, Clara proves her strength while James slowly rediscovers hope. Facing bandits, survival trials, and ultimately the birth of Clara's daughter, the two forge a deep bond. In the end, they choose to build a life together, not out of necessity, but love, respect, and resilience.